Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. And when I'm not co-hosting this podcast, I'm the Director of Executive Search at Dwyer Partners, where I recruit senior leaders in consumer goods and retail. If this is the first time you tune into the podcast, we speak with leaders and luminaries of the consumer and retail industry, mainly in Europe, but sometimes we go beyond to the likes of India or Latin America. I'm very excited about today's conversation because we're going to speak about, believe it or not, a category that we haven't touched on so far, which is cannabis. And to do that, we have the CEO of one of the largest producer in Europe, actually, Mary Jane AG, which is headquartered in Switzerland and part of the Essence Investment Holding. And the name of the CEO is Rico Uesluek. Hi, Rico. How are you doing?
Hey, Daniel. Very well. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. I love being here.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. And we had this pending for a while, so I'm glad that we finally get to do it. And also, that you're coming to speak about a category that we haven't touched on before, and especially after all these years that we've known each other more or less.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, life has some surprises. I wouldn't have imagined 5 years ago that we sit here and speak about the involvement of the cannabis industry together.
Yeah, I know. When I tried to headhunt you in the past, we didn't imagine we'd sit down doing a podcast. But here we go. So, Rico, just for the audience to get to know you a bit better, and obviously I'm going to leave your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, but maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself and your background, because you're relatively new to the cannabis industry and you have a very interesting background in FMCG.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, I'm 48 years old. I'm a German citizen and live in Switzerland now, married, have 3 children. And basically my professional history is from the consumer goods industry, as you said. I had an interesting start after studying economics in Cologne. I joined a cooler manufacturing company, which was a Greek company. And by saying that, Greece at that time was not absolutely famous for, household appliances.
Yeah, you did.
But it was an amazing, interesting experience. I started there founding a new company in Western Europe, in Germany, to start expanding their business out of Greece into Western European countries. Obviously, that was a challenging part because, as a Greek cooler manufacturer with a sound name, blue chip companies being present in the market there, we've started building that business from scratch back in 2002. And I stayed there for 7 years and left the company as its managing director for Central Europe. Having said that, it was an amazing experience, amazing time.
And it's interesting because very early on in your career, you took leadership positions. You were also like a big fish in a small pond as well, which is an interesting one and very different to lots of people that we speak here that start in a blue chip FMCG company.
Absolutely. So I can recommend we do maybe another podcast episode just around this 7 years in this cooler manufacturing company. Nevertheless, it became very successful from basically having nothing in Central Western Europe. I left the company 7 years later as its managing director with more than 100 million euro sales per year.
Wow.
And one of the largest customers we got during that time in the area of commercial refrigerators was Coca-Cola in Germany, because a commercial refrigerator for Coca-Cola is a big asset for sales, right? And somehow Coca-Cola recognized that there was a guy selling coolers, did his job pretty properly. So they asked me to join their team. And that was, of course, an incredible opportunity for me to join this global leader, beverage industry, consumer goods. So I started in 2009 as a head of key accounts with Coca-Cola Germany at that time. leading a lot of great customers from Burger King, Subway to some retail accounts. And I stayed there for 11 years. And this key account role, I became the director of sales for the German market. I became a general manager in operations, led logistics, supply chain, sales within the largest region. And after that,
they were effectively training you to become a general manager or CEO, no, with all these cross-functional moves.
Yes, this is basically one of the greatest gifts I have experienced throughout my entire career. Is in Coca-Cola, obviously, you need to drive your own performance and willingness to drive and deliver success and develop yourself. But I was lucky enough that I had a very, very good mentor during the time, or even more than one, which supported me on that journey. And that's equally important, Daniel, to your own willingness to move out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because being in sales and then being maneuvered into an operational role, that doesn't work just if you have a good mentor. That only works, looking backwards now, if you really work on yourself, be open, ask a lot of questions, develop yourself. And that was basically what I did. And it was a great time. After the operational role, I became VP of marketing, which was, again, completely out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But it led to a GM role afterwards within Coca-Cola Switzerland, where I stayed for another 3 years.
Which, by the way, meant the change. Not you saying Coca-Cola Switzerland, but there's more to it. You actually did a change which is relatively uncommon, which is to go from one bottler of Coca-Cola to another bottler.
Yes, exactly. And of course, for many people outside of the beverage industry, that sounds like you're moving from Coca-Cola, one company, just from one country to another, and then questionable why you move from a big country like Germany into a small market like Switzerland. For me, that time, it was moving from Coca-Cola European partners to Coca-Cola Hellenic, which was definitely, it was the same core portfolio. It was the same partnership with the Coca-Cola company, but the culture was different. The way of working was different. Strategy in the market was obviously totally different. And from a market perspective, I can say that Switzerland is a smaller country versus Germany, but it has its challenges. And culturally, it's different than Germany. Switzerland incorporates 3 countries basically in one, which is very unique in continental Europe. It's the German part, it's the French part, it's the Italian part. So it was amazing 3 years over there.
Yeah, and then the retailers are very different than in Germany as well. Like you don't have, like I know it doesn't affect Coca-Cola so much, but like a big chunk of the FMCG, especially household personal care retail market in Germany is drugstores. And they, I think, they're very residual, like they're huge in Germany, very residual in Switzerland. Or Switzerland's biggest player, Migros, in grocery, doesn't exist in Germany, for instance. So,
yeah, it's a very interesting market structure where in Germany you have classic retail, you have a very strong discount channel with Aldi, Lidl, and its players. And in Switzerland, you have basically a duopoly, which is the Migros group and the Coop group. So those 2 players, they run their supermarket chains, they run the largest discount chain, they run wholesalers, they run petrol stations. So it's a very interesting, from a commercial perspective, it's a very interesting market.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that's interesting with you, Rico, is that you started in a small business, went to a big business in beverages, and then went to another big business, but in a completely different category, which is, I mean, it's still consumer, but it's consumer electronics, which was at Logitech. How did that move work out?
This is Daniel. This is a little bit what describes Rico most. It's not that I'm getting bored after a certain amount of time, but I love personal challenges. I love, as I said, moving out of my comfort zone. And after more than a decade with Coca-Cola, Logitech approached me, and it was a tough call. It was a tough decision after more than 10 years leaving Coca-Cola, where my heart is it belongs to that brand. Still, it does. But Logitech offered me a great role. They offered me the managing director role for the second largest region in the world, which is all the German-speaking countries, and the setup of Logitech was in a few areas different versus Coca-Cola, which challenged me personally a lot. That was first of all from the product portfolio and marketing and customer landscape. It was slightly different because the majority of the business of consumer electronics within Logitech is digital, right? You work with customers like Amazon, other pure players, online players. You build in marketing digital ecosystems. And then you had this great occasions like gaming, esports, online content creation, which I have worked a bit in this environment within Coca-Cola. But for Logitech, it was the core areas of growth. And I love everything around digital. I love the dimension of esports and gaming. So I said yes, because I also felt in love with the people at Logitech. I took this challenge. It was not easy because it was, starting to learn again from scratch, a portfolio of 900 SKUs, new customer landscapes, a lot of digital innovations. In consumer electronics, you bring innovations every year to the market. It was an amazing time of learning, obviously, but it was also a lot of fun.
Yeah, you bet. And no, that's the thing, like the customer base is, especially in the US, it would be a different story because you have like Walmart and Target that sell everything. But in Europe, it's like just independent electronic chains, completely different ways of working. That would be for another podcast, Rico. I think there's a lot of spin-offs we could take out of this one. So what type of crazy person would leave blue chip multinationals to go to work in cannabis, Rico?
Very crazy people. Basically, Daniel, cannabis for me, when I started to dig deep into the topic after I met the major shareholders of the company, and we started the discussion, cannabis has to me two basic things which I find incredibly amazing. The first element is around the plant itself. The few thousand years old plant is a magical plant, and if I say magical, it's not only about the effects which recreational cannabis can do to your body and brain. It's about the medical purpose. It's about freedom of choice for adults to use the components of the plant. Where now is the time in our life where this changes, from a social perspective, from a legal perspective. So it's an absolute interesting moment in time to be part of that change. And the second topic is around the economic perspective of cannabis if legalization hits the market. If you look at the United States, where it's still legalized only in less than 30 federal states and not countrywide, this industry is generating now $25 billion US. And it's the fastest growing industry these days in the United States. If you compare that with the alcohol industry, with the beverage industry, or with the tobacco industry, it's among adult categories, it's the fastest growing industry. And the economical perspective for Europe is incredible. We're speaking here about an opportunity, if you see the still black market figures and so on, which is more than $80 billion long term. And working on this economical opportunity, together with my first point, which I mentioned around the benefits of the plant, bringing the people the freedom of choice, that excites me a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think and it's interesting in the US how it really, and there's still a lot of potential for it to develop and grow in many different ways. But if you think about it, 20 years ago, which 20 years ago was the year 2004, it's not even that long ago, it was unthinkable, right? Like people were going to jail because of weed possession in, I think, probably all states of the US back then.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is still part of the majority of countries in the world.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that a lot of economies in the world, a lot of governments in the world start to rethink that process, because obviously you have a lot of validated data now from countries like Canada and so forth. And you see the impact. You see the impact that with a properly done legalization of cannabis, the illicit market is going down. Criminalization is going down. One of the key elements of legalizing cannabis is also around the quality of the product. Because what you cannot ignore, let's have a zoom in on Europe, that in Europe we have around 8 to 9% of the total population using cannabis today, right? And this 8 to 9% of the population mainly use cannabis from the illegal market. And the quality of the illegal market is not comparable at all with the quality companies like Mary Jane are producing.
And what's the state of affairs of cannabis in Europe right now in terms of like its legal status? Because, for example, I'm here in Barcelona, which here we have a very specific environment in which you have like smoking clubs where if you become a member, you can effectively purchase marijuana. I know that you can also purchase CBD legally, which is, maybe we can go a bit into the category mix as well. But sorry, a lot of questions at the same time, Rico.
No worries, no worries. It's an interesting topic. Maybe let's start with this. The cannabis industry is a couple of industry combined in one. The first industry is the CBD industry. CBD is a cannabinoid which has a very low THC content. If you make a comparison with alcohol, you could say that CBD is the alcohol-free beer within the cannabis industry. However, that would be a bit easy comparison because CBD has a lot of positive elements to your body and your well-being. But CBD is one category in itself. The second category we look at is the medical purpose of cannabis. So it's called medical THC. CBD can also play a medical role, but medical THC is a closed ecosystem. And the third industry is about recreational cannabis. That is the category which appears or which grows once cannabis is legalized. And if you look at the markets in general all over the world, when countries or governments start discussing legalization of cannabis, the first phase is always CBD, because within this legalization discussion, CBD is always the first thing which pops up, because it's in many markets legal. It can be produced, the cannabinoid can be leveraged and produced in different formats, from oils which you use to cosmetic products to flowers which you can smoke, or up to pet food, right, which brings certain benefits. And once CBD is in a market, the second topic which always comes is medical THC. And medical THC is always easier to implement because there's a lot of research which has been done, a lot of acceptance already within the doctors and patients community. And the third element, once medical THC is in the market, the discussion start about recreational. And recreational legalization is always the most complicated approach. And what we see, it's always very fragmented, like the approach in Spain towards the path of full legalization. You have this social club strategy, which will also now be implemented, by the way, in Germany. You have a different approach in Switzerland with pilot projects within the big cities. And once the recreational market is there, like in Canada, or in the states of the United States, which have legalized, that is the biggest market. And medical is always then slightly in decline. And CBD continues playing a role, but not as big as in the beginning of this phase.
Mm-hmm. And then you have the Netherlands and Europe, which is like the market, no, so to speak, because I think it's been legalized for what, 40, 50 years or something like that?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest rumors around cannabis, I think, in the world, because in the Netherlands so far, cannabis has never been legalized.
Yeah.
What happened in the Netherlands? In the Netherlands, there was the acceptance that cannabis products can legally be sold over the counter in the famous coffee shops. Unfortunately, the cultivation of cannabis, the supply of cannabis, was never legalized in the Netherlands, meaning that the route to market from cannabis to the coffee shops was always illegal, right? So it was a very, very unique system, which of course does not work long term because you're not fighting the black market. You don't have control over the quality of the products. And this is something which now changed in December last year. The Netherlands have started as well a full recreational pilot project. They gave 10 licenses, or they are giving out 10 licenses for cultivation and establish a full supply chain from cultivating the plant, delivery to the coffee shop, and selling to the consumers. So if this project in the Netherlands works well, in a few years, then we will see a fully legalized cannabis business in Netherlands.
Yeah. Are there any other countries in Europe that are doing similar pilots or have even legalized it?
Yes, Switzerland is the most advanced country in that sense in Europe. Switzerland has started almost a year ago pilot projects in their capital cities. And within those capital cities, up to 5,000 consumers in the city of Basel, Bern, Lucerne, or Zurich, and they could have applied for a recreational cannabis test, which means that if you were a regular cannabis user, you applied for a test, and you're allowed to purchase your cannabis in different varieties, from flowers to gummy bears to vape to extracts, in pharmacies in Zurich, Basel, or Bern. And this test obviously is accompanied by scientific research. You have a lot of questionnaires for the consumers and so on. And it's set up to be run for 4 or 5 years. And if tests there go well in the big cities, then Switzerland is going to legalize cannabis in a way like we see it today, most probably in the United States or Canada.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that with cannabis, there has been some studies, but I think that most of the things that are said about cannabis, like me saying that it was legal in the Netherlands, are more like part of the popular culture, rumorology, or myths, if you like. What are some of the common myths that you think are worth busting publicly about marijuana or cannabis?
Well, the picture we all have in mind is depends a little bit on how old you are. It's either the hippie in San Francisco Bay Area from the 60s, 70s with long hair, smoking the joints and playing the guitar, or maybe the younger people with Snoop Doggy Dogg, Dr. Dre,
of course,
into that direction. This is the picture we all have in mind. And then it's the Backstreet Boys, not the group Backstreet Boys, but it's in the shady areas of the town, where you buy the stuff in a difficult environment. That's in many markets not the truth anymore. Cannabis you find cannabis in the middle of our society. That's driven by the purpose of the plant, because many people understand, especially in our environment today, that the plant cannabis can help you with a lot of problems you experience in a very natural way, whether it's anxiety, whether it's being sleepless, whether it's pain, right? Many people, especially after the pandemic years, experience a lot of pains like back pains, headaches, and so forth. And cannabis is a very good treatment there. So cannabis is not the hippies and hip hop part of our society. It's in the middle of the society. And if you go into so-called cannabis dispensaries in the United States or Canada, which is the new way of doing coffee shops, it more looks like an Apple store or Starbucks, right? And that's the change we're going to see.
Yeah. I've also seen, probably as I've grown older, a big change in the type of consumption of cannabis in my social circles than I saw when I was younger, right? As well as it's become more legalized. Like I have friends that have perfectly normal jobs and are perfectly functional, and in the weekend they maybe have some cannabis to relax or be around people and so on. And that doesn't mean A, that they have to take other substances, or B, that they're like dysfunctional or something like that. So
Absolutely. Actually, I don't like the comparison, but there is a lot of truth in it. It's a bit like alcohol. I'm not saying that alcohol is totally comparable to cannabis, but the way on how alcohol was brought into our society, there are some similar aspects, because alcohol came out of prohibition, right, many years ago. And it became, after many years, socially accepted. And the other thing, may that is be treated well or not so well in some areas, markets, we as a society managed to regulate alcohol in a pretty good way, right? We can steer that alcohol is not accessible to children, that it's not sold under 18 years in retail stores or supermarkets, in bars and so forth. So a regulation there, quality aspects around alcohol, right, of the alcohol producing industry, there are high standards. This is something in this industry, what happened. And my belief is that in cannabis, it will follow a same path, right? Industry standards are there, extremely high standards, almost on a pharmaceutical level. The education of the consumers is part of what we're driving forward. And then treating it very responsible, because it's a product for adults.
Yeah, and reflecting on the alcohol experience, I think that if we think of like places where there's like a public health problem around alcohol, nobody blames it on alcohol being legal, right? It's more a societal issue that causes people to go into substance abuse, right? So I think it's a bit in the same way.
This is the point where for me personally, I stopped comparing cannabis with alcohol, because the effect on your body on cannabis is completely different.
Yes.
Versus the effect alcohol has to your body.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So tell us a bit about Mary Jane and your role as a CEO. So in the current framework that we've talked about, and this has been great, I think, to set the scene. What does the business currently look like in terms of route to market and products?
Yeah. Mary Jane was founded in 2017 by two brothers in Switzerland. They basically opened up, when the legal framework started to allow that, the first European CBD stores, which was a tremendous success. They made a lot of money, they were pioneers, and they started to open up more stores. And obviously, as they were very smart, their intention was to optimize the processes, drive more profitability. So they started to cultivate their own plants. And that was a rather small production then, until 2020, with a capacity of less than 1 ton. And during that day, the founder of Essence, who had already a stake in Swiss Extract, got into contact with the founders, and saw the tremendous opportunity of what they have built on a small scale. And they had big dreams and plans to build Europe's largest cultivation. But of course, as it is with young founders, they didn't have enough money to bring that dream to life. So Essence bought a majority stake in Mary Jane, and financed the building or construction of the production facility, which is now a state-of-the-art production facility in Switzerland and the largest within Europe. And the business evolved pretty successful. The company has now delivered 12 consecutive quarters of profitable growth, both in revenue and EBITDA, which is very unique these days within the cannabis industry. Due to basically 2 or 3 elements. The first element is that the founders produce most likely recognized the world best quality CBD flowers. It has been awarded a few times as the world best flower, and quality, I believe, is the number one agenda item for us in the past, but also moving into the future. So quality is great. And the second element is around the state-of-the-art facility, which I mentioned, Daniel, because we are able to produce in most likely the country with the highest labor cost in the world. We produce at a very, very solid low-cost base our cannabis flowers. That's thankful to the state-of-the-art facility which has been built. So best quality at a very competitive price. Due to this magic components, the company has managed within the European market to get a share of almost 30% on the European CBD market.
Wow.
The big, but what's the problem was that as in many startups or young companies, some capabilities were missing. And one of the major capability is consumer goods know-how. Why is that? Because the ultimate goal for every cannabis company is establishing a real love brand with a great consumer portfolio to be present once the legalization hits the markets. And this has never happened in the past because there were no capabilities basically in the company. So Essence, as the holding, has decided 2 years ago that they need to bring in someone who leads the company on the path becoming Europe's number one cannabis love brand with strong FMCG capabilities. And that was the moment in time where Rico came into the play. And I accepted. And the first thing I realized was, okay, I can't do that on my own. I need a great team from a couple of industry experts helping me on that journey.
Yeah, no, and as you know, I know a couple of them. So you've done some solid signings there. And what does your current product portfolio look like?
Yeah, we are operating in 3 areas. Where CBD is still a growing market within Europe because the level of legalization in Europe is still not on the level, obviously, of Canada or the United States. So CBD is still a growing segment. We have, in the past 12 months, since I'm in that industry, we have redesigned our corporate identity, set up great marketing plans, reviewed our portfolio, set up a complete new portfolio within CBD, and focus on a couple of core categories. The core categories for us are CBD flowers. CBD flowers is exactly the same as cannabis THC containing flowers, but without the psychedelic effect, without this effect. So it has the purpose for people which have certain pain. They use these flowers. They don't want to become high, but they want to have a relaxation effect. They want to have a pain relief effect. They want to sleep better. They are using these CBD flowers. Obviously, you need to build a brand, right? To promote these flowers, to drive distribution. In Switzerland, they are sold in standard supermarkets already.
Wow.
Coop supermarket is selling these CBD flowers. Or every petrol station in Austria is selling these CBD flowers. You have thousands of CBD stores across Europe where you can drive distribution and place your products in. The second product category, which is important in CBD, is CBD oils, because obviously flowers, smoking is not for everybody, right? So the extracted cannabinoids in the oil, which you can just put on your skin, for example, has a certain same effect, but it's not for smoking. Yeah. And then we have 2 more categories which we focus on. One is vapes, because cannabis is largely a smoking business. And the e-cigarette or vape market, we see that in the United States, is a market for those people which do not want to smoke a joint like a cigarette, right? They rather prefer an e-cigarette or a vape as a tool. And that's why we're building now this vaping capabilities. And the last product category, which we have just launched, is part of a cosmetic category, which is a very unique sport scale, a hot warming sport scale and a cooling sport scale with a high content CBD insights. And we're working with a lot of professional athletes already from different scenes because it has a very strong effect. So these are the categories which we currently operate in CBD. And the second element is around medical THC, but that's a completely different environment because we're selling here to pharmacies.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. And with the CBD, it's all branded products. You don't do B2B.
No, this is, well, you can sell them also in B2B. Our primarily channels, of course, we're driving direct to consumer business.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to speak with our consumers, drive a great consumer journey. So our e-commerce platform, which we have just developed, is live. You find that under maryjane.com, which is one priority. The second priority in those markets where CBD can legally sold through retail stores or retail shops, and there are various countries within Europe. We focus on big key account discussions, like the big retailers in Switzerland, as I mentioned, petrol chains in Austria, supermarkets in Germany, etc., etc.
What's the vision of the business for the next 3 years?
The vision of the business is, of course, profitable growth, right? Because we want to become Europe's #1 player, and we want to continue the successful path of the founders' history, that we drive consecutive growth every quarter and both top line and bottom line of the company. And our 5 years business plan is doubling revenue and doubling profits every year.
Nice. Well, that's a pretty exciting
yes
employer value proposition.
Absolutely, and it's not unrealistic. It's obviously, Daniel, in no industry it comes, while you sleep, right? So it's in our hands. For me, it's in relation to a couple of points. First of all, we are building our business plans not on hope that, recreational cannabis is going to be legalized in certain states. Our business plans is based on current legal frameworks.
Okay.
And the current legal frameworks in where we see opportunities to double revenue and profits every year is the size of the CBD market, which is $2.6 billion in Europe, 2022, right? And we're far away from a certain share of this 2.6 billion euros. So there's huge room with a great brand and responsible marketing to drive growth within CBD. The second element is around medical THC, which is now legal across all European countries. And that will develop quite significantly in the next couple of years. So only based on current legal frameworks, eliminating hope out of our value equation, we will be able to achieve that. And once, obviously, a market is going to legalize and go into full recreational, then the growth will be much faster versus what we currently see in our plans.
Yeah, if that happened, well, that's for another whole episode, but that would mean like a huge change of gears, right? You would have to have a 10th gear at least.
Absolutely.
Rico, with everything that you've learned in your career, because you've done a lot, as we were saying before, what is you can only give one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
The one piece of advice is start listening earlier to people with more experience. Because, when you're young, when you see yourself in an environment and you see first successes, it's staying on the ground and listening and being humble is not given by nature, right? So I give you an example. When I was leading key accounts within Coca-Cola Germany, and had negotiations with CEO level of big blue chip companies and so on, my personal imagination was, after that role, I should be CEO of Coca-Cola, of a big market. And I was luckily enough that I met very smart people with a lot of patience with me, which gave me the opportunity to experience and learn that I'm not there yet, right? That my profile is not rounded enough to do really this big next steps. And in the past, it was really difficult, because when you're in that situation, you balance out yourself, take a step back, and listen and understand where your gaps are. I would give my advice to my personal Rico: listen and try to understand and take it serious what the people are telling you in that sense.
Well, it's funny, how relative age is, because when you're 25, you think you know everything, and then you become 30 and you're like looking at 25-year-olds and think, goodness, these people are so young, aren't they? Well, this was great advice, Rico, and thanks a lot, because this was super interesting. I'm going to try to give a bit of a summary of the top topics that you gave here. So first of all, Rico, you said you're defined by looking for challenges, and I think that your career kind of speaks for that, like starting in a small Greek business, selling refrigerators, and then going to Coca-Cola, then going to Logitech, and then going to Mary Jane. I mean, that's quite a career.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Then about the cannabis industry. So I thought it was interesting to break it down into three big buckets. So first we have CBD, which is a low THC content. So it's like more like for relaxing purposes. Then we have medical THC, which is quite advanced in the road to legalization, at least in Europe and the US and Canada. And then we have recreational cannabis, which I think that we're still at the dawn of seeing its full potential.
Absolutely.
The legal framework is evolving in Europe. We have several pilots happening. Switzerland is the most advanced country. And speaking about Switzerland, Mary Jane is headquartered in Switzerland, and you've been able to have very interesting produce a solid cost base and be very cost competitive, producing in Switzerland, which, as we know, is not the most affordable country.
No, that's amazing. Absolutely.
So that's really, really interesting. And it just comes to show how really having the right vision and then investing in the right technology can really be a game changer here. You currently own 30% of European CBD market, which is quite amazing. 12 consecutive quarters of growth, but not happy with that. Still working on really establishing a love brand and a consumer portfolio, especially once legalization hits the market. And finally, talking about the different categories. So we have CBD, which is flowers, oils, vapes, and even a sports gel, which is pretty interesting. And then we have medical THC. And in the next 3 years, I think that Mary Jane is one to look at, just to continue with the profitable growth, become Europe's #1 player, and doubling the business in the next 5 years. And that without considering legalization of recreational, which then would be a completely different thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thanks, Rico, again for joining. Hope you enjoyed it.
Daniel, thank you so much. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope I was able to bring some light into our industry, because it's really amazing. And looking forward.
Yeah, well, I invite the audience to follow Mary Jane's and Rico's journey closely, but I think it will be one to watch. Thanks all for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great day.